Okay, and we're recording. Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Cunha. I am the president of No Strings Theater Productions. Founded in 2005, No Strings Theater is committed to providing professional performance opportunities for emerging artists through workshops, shows, and development projects. Of particular interest is the artistic presentation of untold stories of our diverse communities. In collaboration with Colleen Taffe of Taffe Consulting, No Strings Theater is excited to announce a new initiative promoting mental health awareness and balance in theater. This is done through the engagement of creatives and audiences to help process our emotions and promote balance in these uncertain and challenging times. These workshops will consist of 3 events hosted by Colleen Taffe, promoting different skills for tackling the mental health effects of precarity in the creative industries. The first of these workshops will be held virtually on Sunday, February 20th, 2022, with the goal of in-person workshops later in the season. These workshops include mental health or mental resilience in times of uncertainty on February 20th. On March 27th, an overview of mental illness and addictions. And on April 24th, Purpose is a Painkiller, transforming pain into purposeful advancements. Tickets have been made free, that's right, free, through the generous donations of our sponsors and in an effort to spread awareness and offer support to those who need it, regardless of economic status. For more information or to register for these workshops, please go to www.nostringstheater.com. Colleen Taffe is here, and Colleen is a mental health and addiction specialist, access and inclusion consultant, mental health professional, faith worker, playwright, director, actor, producer, and social advocate. Wearing many hats, No Strings Theater is lucky to have Colleen and share her expertise in both the creative industries and in mental health and addictions. With this ongoing pandemic, now is the most important time to provide support for those struggling with mental health and or addictions, especially those in the arts. In accordance with our new initiative, let's sing, dance, sorry, let me start that again. Let's sing, act, dance, and conversate. No Strings Theater continues to bring new and exciting events where anyone can come together to celebrate the arts. We are proud to honor our mission of telling the stories of Canadians, recognizing those of all backgrounds, and sharing those stories that have been historically untold. Whether raising advocacy for diversity or mental health, No Strings Theater seeks to give back to the arts community in Toronto. I am privileged and honored to be here with our guest, Colleen Taffe, who is hosting our workshops with No Strings Theater. I hope you will join us in a conversation about mental health and theater. But Colleen, I am so happy to have you here. Welcome. Welcome to my show. What is this? I think it's,
thank you.
We're just going to talk, but this is
we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to sing, act, dance, and conversate.
I'll leave the singing and acting to you, but I will listen and watch and admire. But really, thank you very much for being here, and thanks for your time and sharing with us some of your expertise in mental health and in theater.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. I think we've been given a gift, or at least I've been given a gift in this time of the pandemic to really have an opportunity to really look inside and kind of search. And, I think a lot of people are trying to discover purpose and what does it all mean? And so it is such a great opportunity to emerge with such direction when it comes to the work that I do. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, tell us about your story. How did you come to the intersection of theater and mental health? That's not something that a lot of us hear regularly. So how did you get there? What's your story?
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like, these, corny people, theater, and it found me. It just, fell upon me. But literally, I had been working in mental health for so long. I think theater, comedy, acting, all of that stuff is something that I've used as a coping strategy for my own personal feelings of mental health distress and crisis at times. It has always been my escape. And so I have been working in mental health for over 20 years. I know I look 20, but I've been working for over 20 years. And so what happened was I was just keeping them so separately. But one day, about in 2016, I was at work and I had a client who died, and that really just there's something about his story. I just remember thinking, who we're never going to hear this voice again. Who's going to tell this story? And that's when the they just started to merge together. And I began to write a story. I really wanted to write a tribute to this client whom, oddly enough, I had never really met person to person, face to face, but just had a great connection with him. He was young. He was from the Jamaica. He was into drugs and alcohol. He had suicide tendencies. He was living with schizophrenia. But man, Brian, beneath all of that was this, I can only say gentleman, this young kid that just for whatever reason tugged on my heartstrings. And so I wrote his story. I really wanted an opportunity to tell people that there's life, that people are not just crazy or not just living with schizophrenia. There's a whole other journey to them. And so I began to tell the story, and that's what happened. It took on a life of its own. Peace of Mind, which is something that No Strings Theater is going to be producing. And after we did a couple of shows, in the community and community theater, I just really realized that this is where I want to land. That all of a sudden I had like this aha moment. I'm like, oh, that's what it all means, And so the two of them crossed path. I began to really talk to people about the importance of using theater to really overcome some of life's most challenges.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That it's quite an impactful story. And thinking of mental health in theater today, I would be hard pressed to find a community that's been more impacted by the pandemic than theater professionals, theater folks, people who work in the arts. Certainly, many people have been affected by this pandemic. But when we think about how we are, how mental health and theater intersects. In your experience, what are some of the challenges that you think that people who work in theater are facing with their mental health and with the arts? What have you seen, or what have you been thinking about between theater and mental health?
Yeah, I think that's it, right? It's such a great question, because what I have been seeing is a whole bunch of artists. So obviously I am an artist, so I have a lot of artsy friends, people who write, who, sing, dance, whatever it is. And so I've seen a lot of that struggle where they're saying, you know what, should I give up? Like, I can't even eat. Everything is shut down. I've got to take another job. Does that mean that I'm not who I say I am? We know that being creative, I think that we're prone to the sensitivities of the world. I was doing a workshop and I said, yeah, you find yourself highly sensitive, because as an artist, throughout history, we've always interpreted the world to itself, right? Whether it's painting or music. I mean, we've always been this pulse that interprets the world for itself. And so when you find that, you're no longer, you feel uncertain about the future. You don't know if the doors are ever going to open. You don't know if you're ever going to play music or anyone's going to gather to listen. And I know we say we do it for the craft, but no, we want that audience. We want people to hear it at times. And so I am just listening to a whole bunch of my artist friends say, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And on the flip side, what I've discovered is, as people are in this pandemic and looking for coping strategies, the gyms aren't open, the restaurants, yes, that's one side of it. But man, I've discovered in my clinical work, in my clinical practice, that people had theater, they were singers, they were dancers, they were doing all of this creative stuff to help manage and balance their mental health. And then for myself, I got stuck. I haven't been able to write a play. I haven't been able to focus on my children's stories. There's things that I found that I couldn't do because I just felt so lousy about the situation that we're in. So I really feel that that's what I'm hearing from a lot of artists and from a lot of people who don't even consider themselves as an artist. They just think, I just do this as a hobby. Well, even those hobbies are now people aren't able to do or express. And so I really wanted an opportunity to put those two together and really look at it. And I've been doing some research and realizing, yeah, this isn't uncommon. All throughout the world, there are artists who've been out of work for now going on 2, possibly 3 years. And that has a huge impact on who you are. You know, that workshop, purpose is a painkiller. I am so heartedly believe that whether you are creative in the business sense, because I think some of these business folks, we like to think we're not creative, but those individuals who are running business, Fortune 500 company, I don't care what it is, there's a part of our brains that are so creative. And so when that creativity has been swallowed up by life's uncertainties, then yeah, people are definitely struggling and looking for outlets. And on the far end of the spectrum are people that want to die, that just think that I have no purpose. I'm not doing theater. I'm not singing. I'm not dancing. I can't record. Studios aren't open. You know, there's no art classes, whatever it is. And so people feel like I'm useless and I just want to die.
And also the importance of theater and art has really been, I think, prevalent to folks who just even attend it or are spectators of it in the last 2 years. You know, a lot has happened in the last 2 years during this pandemic, but I think for folks who couldn't really sort of conceptualize how art and theater and performance contributes to culture and contributes to the life that we have moving through this
Absolutely.
world. I think it's been
Even
especially prevalent.
economically, right? It's not just those performing artists, those in front of the stage, but we've got people, you know, managers of theaters, you know, box office, all of that stuff that's attached to the theater, right? And we didn't recognize it. And as well, I think that sometimes in my perspective, can I just share being a Black, a Jamaican Canadian, you know, my parents were like, yeah, you're not going to go to school for your hobby, you know, theater, nah, get a real job. You know, we've a lot of us in the ethnic community, we've grown up that way, hearing that because our parents gave us an opportunity to come to this country, not to sing and dance. No, I want you to be a lawyer, a doctor, a businessman. Nothing wrong with that. But what ends up happening is we're struggling to figure out who we are, right? And so we don't realize the impact that the lack of theater has had on society. It really is a huge void. And I think if we really sat down and weighed the costs, we would see that it's going to impact the ripple effects are we haven't even begun to see just yet, right?
I mean, just another example, I'm going to use this as a quick plug, another example why organizations like No Strings Theater are important and why you should consider donating to No Strings Theater if you're watching this, because we are a registered charity and we do give that money back to performers and contributing to the arts community. So speaking of what you were just talking about, the theater industry and mental health, we have an opportunity here coming out of this pandemic. I mean, we're hopeful that things are starting to get better and opening up. But what are some of the things that you would like to see the theater industry evolve to in the future to ensure that mental health is prioritized?
Such a great question. Not only in the theater, but one of the things I believe is that everyone needs a mental health clinician, just like everyone has a GP that follows them through their life that you go to just to check in on to say, hey, you know, I'm not feeling right, something's hurting. I think it's the same thing with mental health. I think sometimes we get to we try to access help in the crisis. And I just feel like if we were able to continue to check our mental health, it would be so much better. And so I would love theaters, organizations where they have highly creative and sensitive people to really speak to the mental aspects of being an artist, right? It's draining. You're on the road, you're not getting any sleep, your feet hurt, like all of these things that impact an artist. And so I would love not only with the theater, but with every organization, that there be attention to the mental health specialist. I wish that our government, I know that there's rumbling about providing psychotherapy as a, as a resource like a GP, OHIP covered is what I'm trying to say. I wish there was more of that, because I would love for theater managers and directors and all of those individuals to really make sure people are feeling balanced.
Yeah.
That's another reason, Brian, why this came about. I do plays and I work with artists, and but because I'm the mental health specialist, everybody, it's like the actors that I choose, sometimes I'm like, hey, what do you mean? Like they might be struggling. They would be struggling. I haven't done one production in all of my years that I haven't had one of my actors come to me and say, this is what my struggle is. And so we understand what the numbers are. 1 in 4 people will, be diagnosed. And so we understand that it's real and it's out there. I would love for us to be able to look at mental health as in every area of business and the world, right? Mind, body, and spirit, because people need an opportunity to talk. And I think in this environment, in this pandemic, we've really realized what isolation can do to a person, right? Whether or not you struggled before, when you're coming out of it, you might realize how much of a struggle that you're having because of isolation. And I find that a lot of creative individuals can feel isolated. Even at work, when I go to work, I'm like, does anyone think like me here? Am I the only one that is so outside of the box and thinking? So yeah, I would love an answer to your question. I would love to see a little bit more structure when it comes, we send them to physiotherapy, check on the body if you're a dancer, and you make sure your hands are right if you're, play an instrument or whatever. I'd love that in every different aspects of the creative world, and in every part of it, that there would be a part that individuals had to pay attention to their mental health, whether it's a workshop, whether it's counseling, whatever it is. I think that it's an important part of everyday living.
I mean, it's not as far-fetched as I was expecting, because we in theater have we have folks who are in specific roles that keep actors or other people safe. So like if there is a combat scene on theater, there's a combat person who is trained in order to make sure that those individuals are safe. So just like when you are playing a character and you are trying to be as vulnerable as possible, or you are exploring emotions that can be really triggering, it's important to have someone close by who sort of has that almost like mental health first aid, or is able to support
Yes.
that kind of experience, because that could be really damaging. So having someone close by who's trained in doing that, I think is such a, like, almost a simple solution, but such a good one.
Yeah.
One thing
I
too, I
think you're
wanted.
right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned that there's a nurse, there's a first aid person usually on set, and I know that a lot of actors, if we're just talking about theater, the actors, they will go and do their own therapy, right? Some of these characters that cause you to go so deep in that you must look at doing that, but it's so individualized. I'd love to see it a little bit more standard, just as you
Mhm.
said. Mhm.
The last 2 years, certainly the pandemic has been sort of like monumental, but also there has been quite a movement, or sort of long overdue conversations, if that, regarding sort of systemic racism, in that's sort of embedded in the fabric of our culture and our systems around us. As a Black artist, how have you been able to reconcile these conversations and attempts at inclusion? And have you seen that yet in the theater industry, or are you seeing that in the theater industry? Or are you feeling like some of the conversations have been performative? Mind the pun, but what have you seen? Have you been seeing any changes, any movement in the theater industry?
I mean, I would like to say there is a lot of chatter. There's a lot of chatter, and that could be heartbreaking for a person of color, because it's like all of a sudden the world woke up, and all of us were kind of like, okay, this hasn't been a secret for us.
Mhm.
I know that when everything unfolded, I went silent because I just didn't know how to respond. In some of my work with the intersection between racism and mental health, because that's a huge intersection. I haven't met any Black person that isn't hypervigilant, that isn't looking over their shoulders, that doesn't feel paranoid or anxious, that doesn't see a car pulling up, a cop car pulling up behind them, and their heart not race a little bit. So there's a great intersection there. And for myself, I see a lot of talk. I was working with a company that wanted to kind of bring some more Black people in, basically, and that's great. I think surface wise, yes, we can go out and recruit a whole bunch of Black people, but what does that do? Like, it doesn't get to the heart of the matter, where people are walking around with biases and prejudice, and not just white people against Black, but I would be totally honest, I have my own prejudice going on here too. I wouldn't want anyone to put a microphone, in my house when I have certain things to say. And so what am I trying to say? That there is this, when I do workshops on race and racism and mental health, I talk about the stages of grief. And if you're familiar with the stages of grief, there's anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance, etc. And I say that in order for us to have a conversation, or for a person of color to have a conversation, you better make sure that they are in that right stage of grief, right? Because for some of us, we're too angry to talk, and that's okay. For some of us, we are too depressed to talk, and that's okay. Some of us are still trying to bargain, our way into something, and that's okay. But what I would love us to see is that we get to this place of acceptance. This is what it is. Now, once I'm at that stage of acceptance, I can now move on to the recovery stage, right? And so I feel like the whole world is at different stages, and I don't know if we're quite there at the acceptance stage and ready to move forward with a plan of action. I see a lot of talk, a lot of money being thrown out. I never wrote the word. I've never checked the black box as many times. I'm like, check, because everything now, it's so great to be Black in Canada. I don't mean to laugh. That's not funny, but that's the reality. And so my hope is that will transition into an acceptance where it just is. I know I'm talking a lot, but here's what I say to people. This is what I want. When we can get to this stage, that I'm like, okay, when we can get to the stage where I am watching, a television show in prime time, at prime time hours, and the whole cast is Black, and nobody says it's a Black show. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I can just go to a theater and have a whole ballet of Black people, and nobody, or of ethnic people, and nobody leaves there thinking that was a show for the Blacks. Does that make sense? We talk about equality. We talk about Black Lives Matter. When we can go to the continents of Africa and the Caribbean, and maybe we can say, you know what? We're going to erase your debt. You know why? Because we've pillaged from your lands, and we're asking you to pay back money that we know you could never afford to pay back. How about we just ask you, we forgive your debt. And this way we can give you a fighting chance on being able to build economic resources in your country. When we get to that stage of acceptance, then I'll say we are there. But right now we're just so mixed. And I think the theater community feels that way. I've got, being in theater, you have friends of all different colors and races and sizes. And I love that about being in Canada. But now I feel like some people, they don't even know how to approach me. Like, what do I call you? What are you? And I'm like, well, first, I'm a Black woman, and that's okay for you to recognize that. So that has been an added stress when it's kind of like waking up and realizing, right, we really are that far behind. Do you know what I mean? Like, for so long, I was able to just push on and just be a great clinician. And then it was like the last 2 years, I realized, oh, right, I'm a Black clinician. I just want to be a good clinician. I just want to be a good actress. I don't want to have to be a good Black actress or have a good Black business. I just want to be and exist
Mm.
like everybody else. And I just don't think that we're there yet, right?
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. Um, you spoke a little bit about, you told us your story in the beginning. You were sharing about your experiences navigating the world as a Black woman, as a Black artist. At No Strings, our mission is to tell stories of Canadians, especially untold stories of racialized people in Canada. Why why for you, or why is storytelling important, and how does that sort of go back to intersecting with mental health? So why is it important for No Strings to be sharing these sort of untold stories of racialized folks in Canada, and then how does that sort of link back into mental health?
Absolutely. I think the story of mental health is an untold story,
Mm.
right? Stigma, and shame and all of that stuff has kept it hidden for so long. And so I love what No Strings is doing. I mean, I'm so thrilled and excited to even have the opportunity to work with you folks
We're
because
excited too.
yes, yay!
Yeah.
Because I think, the Canada is this rich mosaic of hidden gems and hidden stories and hidden, possibilities. Just before I came to this evening, I was meeting with a client who we were like biding time, waiting, and she told me this story about who she was, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I can like capture that. I want to write that down. It's so rich and so exciting, and so I think that the importance of telling these untold stories. I think we are on the time where there's such uncertainty, and we have a great opportunity to rebuild and reset ourselves during this pandemic. And I think we can emerge, in the uncertainty, but knowing that that uncertainty can bring about such great change, right? And so I think I feel like I'm losing the question,
No,
the
you're
whole
right
thing.
on. It kind of
Yeah.
circles even back to the story you told in the beginning that sort of inspired you to bridge mental health and
Oh, I
theater,
know.
and
Yeah.
also intersects with race. And, like being
Yeah.
able to tell the story of this man who impacted you so deeply,
Yeah.
and also sort of tell the story of him being a human being,
A
and
human
navigate
being.
this world
Yeah.
um, as a human, and not as sort of those labels that were assigned to him by society,
Exactly.
or by sort of the actions that he had in his life. So
Yeah.
it's really a touching sort of circle moment of coming,
Yeah.
how you're still doing it, and you're still providing
Still
space
telling
for
him
stories to
stories.
be told. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Shane. I'll leave it at that. I love him so much, even though, nobody knows. His family doesn't know. Nobody knows but me, but that's just
And him.
my, yeah, and him, my
Mhm.
salute to him. The other thing I was going to say to you about mental health in the theater is I find, even when I'm working with clients or with family members, it can be so stigmatizing to say, you're struggling hearing voices, and this and that, and they're trying to work it all out. But I find when I'm able to use stories or examples, people are so more willing to have those conversations. So
Mm.
with the play Peace of Mind, I kind of used it as an opportunity to say, hey, I wonder if you know anyone that seems like that character over there. And this gave people an opportunity to step outside of themselves and say, okay, yeah, that is a little bit weird. That is a little funny. Maybe I need to check that out. In the play, we talk about the use of alcohol, and how this individual was a highly achiever. He was a businessman. He had everything going on. He was go, go, go. But in the other side of him, he was struggling in so many areas. So
Mm.
using theater is a great way to have courageous conversations.
Mm.
In the world of mental health, when I'm doing workshops, we call it case studies. When you bring these case studies forward and you find solutions, and you kind of work together in a group, and try to help that case along. And I find that doing therapeutic theater is like one big case study. I
Mm.
can then sit back, which I have done after the play. I go into families. I'm like, so let's talk about Joshua. What are some thoughts? And then all of a sudden, people are realizing, oh my goodness, this is what my son has been going through. So me
Mm.
calling him lazy or crazy, there's a part in the play that the main character says that people would more accept me as a drug dealing gangbanger than somebody who's living with schizophrenia as a
Mm.
Black man. He talks about, I can't be suicidal. The world is already killing me from the inside out, right? So all of these things begin to emerge throughout the play, and they start conversations. The number one thing that I want my plays to do is have a purpose, right? Have a message that when you leave the theater, like we should, you start talking about the characters that you see and start relating them to the people around you, your neighbors, your family, your long lost uncle who disappeared one day, your coworkers, your boss, whomever it is, but that we can be a little bit more relatable to the people and what are things that are and the things that are happening to them.
Mm. Wow. Well, uh, those are the questions I have for you. I did want to have one sort of last plug at these workshops that we're really excited for. Again, these workshops are completely free, which we're really excited about, and that has been through the generous donations of our sponsors. Again, in an effort to spread awareness and offer support for those who need it, regardless of what you can sort of contribute. More information about these workshops can be found at www.nostringstheater.com. Our first workshop will be held on Sunday, February 20th, 2020, with Colleen virtually, and in hopes that those will move in person. Colleen, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I know you are an incredibly busy woman, so I really appreciate you sharing your stories with us and sharing your expertise with us. And again, I've said this many times, but No Strings is so excited to partner with you, and we are really excited to see what we can accomplish together.
Yes, we're going to sing, act, dance, and have courageous
I
conversations. So
love that. Way to
I
pull
love
in
it
that
so
last
much
bit. That's
too.
good. That's good.
We're so excited. So come out. And I want to say too, not just for the artist, but for if you are supporting an artist, if you are family or loved one, come out because you might learn some things about how you can help them manage in times of uncertainty. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you very much. And more information on nostringstheater.com. Thanks again, Colleen, and have a good night.
You too. Take
Bye.
care.